Let's face it, there's only so much that a regular pickup truck can do. Once you need a true, tried and tested workhorse, nothing but a heavy-duty pickup truck will suffice, and out of all of them, there's simply no substitute for the phenomenal Ford Super Duty lineup. However, believe it or not, Ford just made its Super Duty even better for the upcoming model year, improving it in virtually every way possible. So with that in mind, let's take a deep dive into the 4 key reasons why you should wait for the 2025 Ford Super Duty. Number 4. Improved capabilities. One of the key reasons why people tend to adore the Ford Super Duty is because of its sheer capability. When spec'd out correctly, the F450 Super Duty can tow up to 40,000 pounds, which is truly monstrous and the best in its class. This is thanks to its diesel 6.7 V8 engine, which puts out a whopping 500 horsepower and an unbelievable 1,200 pound-feet of torque, making it ideal for virtually any chore you throw at it, from pulling down your neighbor's house to kickstarting the world if it ever stops spinning. Well, we're glad to announce that the 2025 model year will come with an even greater performance sheet, as the 6.7-liter will now push out even greater power and torque figures. First of all, the previously maximum 500 horsepower will be brought up to a whopping 520 horsepower. Sure, it might not seem like a lot. However, with this horsepower increase, we'll also be seeing a major torque increase from 1,200 pound-feet to a whopping 1,350 pound-feet. As a result, the truck will now be able to tow up to 45,000 pounds, albeit not more than that. The 500 horsepower unit will replace the now standard 475 horsepower version, which is noticeably less capable than its high-output sibling. However, if you're not a fan of oil burners, don't worry, as even the gasoline options will come with upgraded performance figures. Starting with the base 6.8-liter V8 engine. Boy, oh boy, is it weird to say that a 6.8-liter is a base model engine. Anyhow, the small giant of an engine will now push out around 430 horsepower, which is a 25 horsepower increase over its current iteration. Apart from that, torque figures will also have risen to a very respectable 480 pound-feet, making it more or less on par with a larger 7.3-liter. Speaking of the 7.3-liter engine, that monstrosity will also go through an upgrade, and it will now push out around 480 horsepower and over 500 pound-feet of torque, making it one of the torquiest naturally aspirated engines in existence. And if that wasn't enough, there's also been mention of a high-output version that'll push more than 500 horsepower and 550 pound-feet of torque. However, Ford is yet to confirm this. All of these power plants will be mated to the well-known 10-speed automatic gearbox, ensuring constant torque and power delivery in an engine that'll feel alive and in the power band constantly. Ford also promised to tweak it out too, to increase smoothness while shifting and make it more responsive and direct for better performance. Number 3. The Super Duty receives a much-needed facelift. There's no denying that the Ford Super Duty lineup looks both incredibly good and incredibly menacing. Honestly, the versatility and neutrality of its looks are what, in our opinion, makes it more appealing than the Silverado and Ram heavy-duty pickup trucks. Honestly, just look at the F450. It looks like it can swallow the world with such class and elegance that is simply uncanny. However, we have to be honest. The Super Duty styling neutrality is becoming a bit too much for us, as the truck is starting to look a bit bland, especially after the F-150's recent redesign. So to compensate for this issue, Ford has redesigned the Super Duty 2 for the 2025 model year to make it stand out from its smaller brother better than it does now. First of all, the biggest change will be noticed at the front. The 2025 version of the Super Duty will boast a new grille design that'll be much less fussy than the current one. This will be complemented by a central DRL bar, which will be positioned above the grille and will be very reminiscent of the front end found on the F-150 Lightning. The DRLs in the headlights will also be made into a line that'll be perfectly lined up with a central bar, creating a modern, seamless, and aesthetically pleasing, yet clean and elegant front end. Speaking of the front headlights, they will be a tad bulkier looking than the current iteration, so that they can better convey the sheer enormity of the car itself. Apart from the truck's front end, you could expect changes on the side profile too. The sides will be less cluttered with unnecessary trim, and this cleaner look will give the truck a much more no-nonsense and business-meaning look that it oh so deserves. Finally, the back of the truck will remain mostly unchanged. However, we prefer it that way, as the back of the truck was looking pretty good already. The only thing that we could expect is a reduction in the usage of chrome, which is true for the entirety of the truck. This is definitely for the better, as the Super Duty, especially the lariat trim, does tend to look a bit too tacky for its own good. Number 2. Flex Fuel is finally being introduced. Here's the thing that quite a lot of people have been waiting for. Honestly, we were all struck in awe because Ford decided not to grant the Super Duty with its flex fuel system. This is, after all, a truck that is marketed as a no-nonsense, no-compromise utilitarian vehicle, which made it all the more confusing why Ford didn't allow us to have an option of filling it up with E85 fuel when regular gasoline isn't available. What made it even more confusing was the fact that this option was offered on the previous generation with the 6.2-liter V8. Finally, however, Ford has decided to grant us with our long-lasting wish, and the Super Duty will now truly become the no-compromise vehicle that it always presented itself as. That said, there will only be one powertrain on offer, and that'll be the larger 7.3-liter V8 engine. This is because there's little to no logic in adapting the entry-level 6.8-liter to flex fuel. After all, most people who need this feature most likely won't be looking for the cheapest version of the truck anyway. Now, we don't expect this powertrain to make up the majority of the Super Duty sales. However, we're glad that Ford decided to listen to its fanbase for once. Number 1. Much better cabin design. The exterior isn't the only thing that'll be going through a redesign though. Apart from that, we can also expect a massive cabin redesign. This is, in our opinion, going to be an even bigger change and one that is even more urgent than the looks department. You see, even though the Ford Super Duty has a pretty good interior already, it simply cannot hold a candle to the Ram 2500 and 3500, which is one of the key reasons why said truck has been eating into the Blue Oval's truck sales. Plus, we urge you to find the difference between it and the F-150. They look virtually identical. Well, that's about to change now, as the facelifted version of the Super Duty will up its game and skyrocket past its Ram competitors in terms of design and tech, while also matching it in quality. First of all, you can say goodbye to that cluttered mess of a center console. All those unnecessary buttons will be removed. The climate controls will remain, and so will the heated and cooled seat controls. However, the remainder of the commands will be transferred to the infotainment system. Speaking of the infotainment screen, it too will go through a major redesign. Namely, it'll now take on a horizontal layout similar to the Ford Ranger and a lot of other Ford products. This layout will make it easier to access and much clearer to look at. Furthermore, the layout and the system itself will be much more intuitive to use, compared to Ram's offering, due to it being far more logically laid out. Furthermore, the quality of the interior will now be top-notch, especially on the upper echelons of the pickup truck. Virtually everything will now be covered in leather, and all the trim pieces will be varnished in wood or made out of aluminum, giving the interior a very luxurious accent. Finally, the seats, which were fantastic from the get-go, will be even better now. The seats will be padded even better, making them even softer and more comfortable than the current ones, making them truly nothing shy of the Ram's fabulous seats. All in all, the Ford Super Duty will once again secure its spot as the top dog on the segment, as it should. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.